Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by co-host Matt Carter, and this is an episode I think a lot of folks are looking forward to. We're going to talk about the big one this year, NC State hosting Clemson this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. in Carter Finley Stadium. If you're not going to be there, you can watch the game on ESPN, but this is the big game, the one that's been circled all preseason, and now the context of this game leading up to it just makes it that much more exciting and anticipated. So we're going to dive into that, but a quick reminder for the listeners and viewers at home, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Plus, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of great content, including these podcasts, which you can watch on our YouTube channel. We've got press conferences after the game, press conferences throughout the week, recruiting highlights, a lot of great video content. And I know a lot of you guys are already on YouTube. So if you're already on YouTube, then just go subscribe to the Wolfpacker YouTube channel. Because if you have a YouTube account and you listen to this podcast, what are you doing if you're not already subscribed? So go subscribe to the YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up, comment below. Really helps us out, and we appreciate you watching and listening to this show. All right, Matt, let's talk about some Wolfpack Tigers football. It feels, well, first of all, it's the first time we've been able to prepare for this game in almost 2 years now, because as it's called, the Textile Bowl was skipped last year due to the COVID pandemic schedule, which I think had a little bit to do with NC State's 8-4 season last year. And I think, it wasn't a bad year to just, take a break from Clemson. I feel like last year was a good confidence-building year for NC State. No, the schedule wasn't a gauntlet last year, but it was a good enough schedule where they were able to, show their superiority to the mediocre teams in the ACC, get a strong record, and get all that excitement coming into the 2021 season. And we really haven't learned too much about the Wolfpack, at least in my mind, in these first 3 weeks because, other than the disappointment at Mississippi State, things have gone as standard, but they've been against teams where we can't learn too much about the Wolfpack. Meanwhile, Clemson looks pretty disappointing coming into this game. Coming in with a loss already to Georgia. I believe that was a final score of 10-6. Clemson didn't find the end zone in that game. Georgia only found the end zone with a pick six in that game. They blew out South Carolina State, and then they squeaked by Georgia Tech last week, 14-6, Matt? Georgia Tech had a chance to tie the game. 14-8?
Yeah, 14-8.
Yeah, I knew it was a funky score because Georgia Tech had a chance to either tie or take the lead with a late fourth quarter drive. Of course, Clemson gets it done in the fourth quarter in a weird game. But this is not looking like the same Clemson Tigers team that has won, the past 5 or 6 ACC championships in a row. Clemson certainly looks vulnerable this year. However, it's a down year in the ACC, and we don't know too much about NC State. So, Matt, first of all, what's the vibe around Raleigh like? I've been tuning back into some of my local Raleigh sports talk radio shows just to kind of get the juice for the game this weekend. I'm excited, but there's got to be an excitement level in Raleigh. Do you feel that with the fan base?
Yeah, probably. I'll be honest. I thought it'd be a little bit more enthusiasm for it, but I think the after effect of Mississippi State's still a little bit fresh on a lot of minds, but it'll be a packed stadium. We know that. Actually have more fans for Furman than they did for South Florida Family Day, so that played a role in it. A lot of parents coming down to see their children for the first time since dropping them off at school. So that played a role. But I think had they beat Mississippi State, it would be off the charts.
Yeah.
Because they would have sensed, okay, we can start dreaming now. We took care of business against a mediocre SEC team. And this Clemson team has shown some real vulnerability. Maybe this is the year for us to kind of grab the Atlantic Division. So in that regard, it has not been as much as I probably, it certainly could have been. I think it is one of those where fans need to see it a little bit. But they'll be at the stadium. I have no doubt about that. They'll be at the stadium. They'll certainly be watching. They're certainly ready for the game. But they're not maybe jumping up and down in anticipation quite yet for it.
Have they watched Clemson this year?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people, according to the ratings, watched the Georgia game. I don't know about the Georgia Tech game because that was right during the Furman games. The long delay and unusualness. But when we get into Clemson, I'm going to point out why people shouldn't read maybe as much into those results as people might think it, just a cautious warning about reading too much into the early games for Clemson.
Oh, I'm with you in the sense that Clemson is still Clemson. Clemson is still the best team in the ACC until we see otherwise. I'm not going to be that fool that says, okay, Clemson squeaked by its first ACC opponent. There's trouble in paradise down there. That Georgia game really had the feel of a juggernaut college football playoff. Two of the best 5 teams in the country going head-to-head, 2 of the probably best 3 defenses in the country going head-to-head, and just a gritty 16-point total game. I love those football games, by the way. And not to tease my prediction too much, but I think we could maybe expect something similar to that on Saturday with these 2 defensive fronts that I think are the best 2 in the ACC. But had NC State beaten Mississippi State, you'd probably be looking at a ranked matchup right now. You'd potentially be looking at a game that would have College Game Day in Raleigh for it, because the only other competing game would have been Notre Dame-Wisconsin. That's being played at Soldier Field. Of course, Wisconsin already has a loss, and Notre Dame hasn't looked too stellar, but 2 big-name programs. So, game day or not, I know it's big for a program. I personally don't care about it. I'm sure the fans probably would have enjoyed it. Would have been cool to see. But, if you are a true NC State fan, you've been around the block, you've seen this a time or two, you know that the law of Wolf would not have allowed NC State to go 3-0 with just a fistful of confidence going into this Clemson game and then, meet the expectations. Because the expectations for NC State going into this game would have been, personally, I would have think they would be outrageous if NC State was undefeated going into this game. You'd probably be looking at a spread that was less than a touchdown for Clemson, and you'd have a lot of NC State fans expecting NC State to win on Saturday. I don't think the expectation is for the Wolfpack to win Saturday, but I think there's certainly an expectation that this will be a good game and it'll keep it close. The spread right now is Clemson is a 9.5-point favorite. The over-under is 47 the last time I checked. May have gone down since. The line opened up about 12, was quickly bet down to 10 points, and has since been bet down to 9.5. Most of the public money is on Clemson. Of course, why wouldn't you? That Clemson looks juicy with that 9.5 number. You think they can cover that easily. But the sharp money, the ones that the bookmakers don't necessarily love, the ones that actually make some money gambling, most of their money's on NC State. So what does that tell you, Matt? What's kind of your hunch of the feel of this game? Do you see either of these teams breaking through and making this a double-digit game, or do you think we're going to have a pretty tight matchup on Saturday?
That's a great question. I honestly, I think for NC State, their perspective is a tighter, lower-scoring game probably suits NC State better. And the reason why I say that is when you look at Clemson, they've given up 21 points this year as a team. 7 of that came on a pick 6, so now we're down to 14 points. 2 of that came on a safety off a fumble. by Will Shipley. So now we're down to 12 points responsible to the defense. 3 of those 12 points, or 4 field goals, 3 of them came against South Carolina State when Clemson fumbled at its own 35, 36-yard line. And then South Carolina State converted that into a field goal. So now we're down to 9 points. The other team kind of in 3 games where the other team, I think, made a drive and kicked a field goal. There's nothing fluky about that. They played Georgia. They played Georgia Tech, who had some very good running backs at Georgia Tech. There's nothing fluky about that at all. Their defense is elite. It did suffer a significant injury this week in Tyler Davis, a defensive tackle, an All-ACC contender, was All-ACC, I think, second team back in 2019. So there are questions about the interior defensive line, more so from a depth standpoint. I think they feel like they'll be okay with the starters they have. But one of the 2 starters, perhaps their best NFL draft prospect, Brian, how you pronounce his last name. He's been playing kind of less than 100% with a shoulder issue, and still very good. He had a tackle and a half for a loss against Georgia Tech. So, but there may be a little bit of concern about the depth at the interior defensive tackle. But NC State is probably not the team that's going to break through against Clemson defense and put up 24, 28 points offensively on them. So that's why I kind of think for NC State, lowest scoring tighter is better. And on the flip side of that, I think Clemson, if you look at them offensively, yes, their numbers have not been great. But there might be justifiable excuses for some of that. And so that's why I think it's kind of cautious of, look, nobody's going to score against Georgia this year. Nobody's had more than 300 total yards against Georgia this year. They got them first game. They got a fired up Georgia. They didn't have the full eval on Georgia. That's kind of where, you kind of throw that out. Georgia Tech came out with a new defense that they hadn't prepared for. They caught Clemson by surprise, unprepared. Again, that's another one where you kind of say, you would expect a typical Clemson team to say, whatever, we'll still just crush you with our superior talent. It don't matter what defense you get in. So that might be the one between this Clemson and the last and previous Clemson teams. It's still got loaded talent. The quarterback, DJ, I just call him DJ.
Uiagalelei. Uiagalelei.
Sure.
Yeah. DJ Uiagalelei. There you
go. He proved last year he can play. Right, he led him back from an 18-point deficit against Boston College. He broke Deshaun Watson's freshman record for passing yards against Notre Dame. Last time I checked, Deshaun Watson, when he's playing, is a pretty good NFL quarterback. So,
was.
Yeah, that's it, when he was playing. So, the talent is there. Will Shipley is going to be a star running back. The NC State fans will hate to hear that, but it's true. And they got 2 stud receivers on the outside. When everything gets clicking, they'll be fine. And the offensive line just got to come together. But I think there's more upside for Clemson's offense in this game than maybe NC State. Because, I am a little nervous about the yards NC State gave up to Mississippi State in the second and third quarters once Mississippi State kind of settled in. And the other 2 games, NC State really shut down the opponent. They played 2 one with an FCS offense and another is an offense that is playing at an FCS level, even though it's in the FBS. So that's why that would be my one cautiousness about it. Why I think a low and scoring game will actually favor NC State, because I think NC State's upside offensively against Clemson defense is not as high as Clemson's upside offensively against NC State's defense, if that makes sense.
Totally, I agree with everything you said there. If you're an NC State fan, you want this under to hit. Fittingly, that's the side I'm backing. I don't want anything to do with this spread. I think, Matt, after the Mississippi State game, I said, don't you let me at all think about betting NC State on the spread, because you know what? If they win or if they cover, whatever, man, I'm gonna be happy on my own. I don't need the additional juice, but I do like the under in this game because I need to see Clemson's offense be effective against a good defense before I'm ready to say that this offense is, the caliber that we're used to seeing from Clemson. I agree, DJ Uiagalelei. Again, my pronunciation is not perfect, but I'm trying. I'm practicing. I'm at least giving it a crack. So you got to respect the effort.
You're better than me in that regard.
What's that? Oh, okay. Yeah.
You're doing a lot better than me in that regard.
He was the number one overall prospect in his class. He looked great in 2 big games for Clemson last year when Trevor Lawrence was out. He's clearly capable. He hasn't looked like the same player we are used to seeing from him. What we saw last year, what we saw from his high school tape in these first 3 games. I don't expect him to continue his frankly mediocre play. I mean, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Just
other way around, I think.
2 interceptions, 1 touchdown. That's right. Yeah, I mean that's really surprising. 104 QB rating, just 475 yards on the year, and that includes a game against South Carolina State. He's been inaccurate. He's missed some throws, and I think there's been some chemistry to be developed with some of these new young skill players, which, maybe they materialize and become the Clemson skill players that we know to become future NFL studs, but so far they haven't lived up to that reputation. This isn't the same Clemson team that came to Carter Finley Stadium 2019 and put up 42 points in the first half. This isn't the same Clemson team that came to Carter Finley Stadium in 2017 when NC State probably had its best roster construction to win that game, and frankly that may have been the best just overall, not reflective of the result of the game, just the best overall game maybe of the Doran era, because NC State played so well in that game, and so did Clemson. I mean, it was just a championship effort from both teams. Clemson just ended up, having more points at the end of the ball game, but that was a neck and neck, primetime type quality college football game back in 2017 when these 2 teams met in Raleigh. And I expect something much more similar to 2017 than I do 2019. But both of these offenses are not what they were in 2017. And I think you can make the argument for at least NC State that maybe the defense could materialize into something better. I know without Peyton Wilson, I know without Cyrus Fagan, you lose some of that excitement. But you still got that strong depth. You could make the argument that the secondary is a little bit better. You could still make the argument, even without Peyton Wilson, that the linebacker core is better. You're not going to beat 2017's defensive line, but they've got 6 dudes that are capable of, pushing the line of scrimmage back on Clemson's side. So, yeah, I think if you're an NC State fan, you want that under. You've got to establish the run on offense. Let's talk about NC State's offense because it's a big question mark right now. I still think this offense has potential. I think people are maybe sleeping a little bit too much on this offense, just based on the fact that the one time NC State played a legitimate opponent, a good defense, it looked pretty flat. It looked okay in the first quarter. They were moving the ball, they just didn't convert on the red zone opportunities, and the remainder of the game it just looked stymied by Mississippi State's defense. From a confidence perspective, NC State needs to be able to bounce back better in this game because Clemson's going to have some 3-and-out defensive stops. Just go ahead and prepare for that. There's going to be at least one scoreless quarter. You are not going to routinely find the end zone on this Clemson defense. If NC State can get in the end zone 3 times, that's huge. If you can put up 3 touchdowns on this Clemson defense, that's huge. you'd love at least 2, and then hope that you can knock in a couple field goals on top of that if you can get some good field position. But I think this defense, it's gonna have to keep Clemson in check. As long as it can keep it a 1-possession game for most of this game, I think NC State's gonna have a chance. But the run has to be established, and that was what was really missing in that Mississippi State game. Bam Knight, Ricky Person, they didn't have great games. The offensive line also didn't really have a great game against Mississippi State. They're going to face even a better defense in Clemson. I think we underrated Mississippi State's defense. So that was a good SEC quality defense. This is going to be a better defense. Got to find a way to get Bam Knight going, and I think they will, but maybe don't emphasize running left so much, because I think that guy over on the other sideline, Brent Venables, he's going to know that's coming. So might want to spice it up a little bit in the run game. Maybe expect a trick play or 2 up Tim Beck's sleeve. Would love a Thayer Thomas touchdown pass in this game. That would be my favorite prop if that was available. A Thayer Thomas throwing touchdown. I'm sure you could get crazy odds for that if it even existed. I'd love that prop. But when you look at this NC State offense, what does it have to do against this Clemson defense to have success on Saturday? And what did it lack in that Mississippi State game that you think it really needs to step up in for this Clemson date?
Yeah, and honestly, I agree with you. You got to try to run the football. You just can't let them tee off on Devin Leary all game and put it all on Leary. But honestly, I think they're going to have to hit a big play. And they didn't have a big play against Mississippi State. They were there. Anthony Smith got behind the defense a couple of times. Devin Carter behind the defense once. The ball was just a hair overthrown, or I think in one case with Anthony Smith, a hair underthrown. That was an issue also against South Florida. Remember, they didn't really have that explosive pass. So one time, Thayer Thomas got way behind the defense. The ball was unknown. He did connect with Anthony Smith against Furman on a 40-some yard touchdown pass. Again, but Anthony Smith was open deep, and he had to come back and make a jump ball play against Furman. You're asking a lot of your freshmen who just started playing receiver as a senior in high school and is in his 3rd year playing receiver to be trying to win jump balls against Clemson. He has the athletic ability to get open deep. The guy is he's 6'2", and he was a record holder in the state of Maryland back in some sprint during indoor season. So he's the fastest guy on the team. The physical tools are there, but, you need to put the ball on time against Clemson. And they're going to have guys like Emezi and Carter go up and make a play. Those 2 guys can do that. They've done that and shown that consistently. They're going to have to go up and make plays, as Dorn said, with the body on body, and make you're going to have to, playmakers are going to have to make plays. Yeah. Because you're not going to be able to consistently drive the football against Clemson. Georgia and Georgia Tech tried that. Didn't have any success. And so to think that NC State is going to be able to do remarkably better than those 2 teams, it's probably putting on some red glasses, you know what I mean, if you think that's going to happen. So I think you have to go out and do what you can. You have to mix it up. And honestly, you're going to need an explosive play or 2 to set up points. If you do not get some explosive big plays, they're going to be in for a long slog out there on the field. But and it could also come in the running game, by the way. And that's why you got to commit to the run, because 2 years ago, Bam Knight was the lone bright point in that miserable evening against Clemson that everybody saw coming. It was late in the year. NC State was down to, I think at the end of that game, they had 2 freshmen and a freshman walk-on playing linebacker. I mean, it was that bad with the injuries of 2019. It was no shape or condition to realistically take the field against Clemson. But the one bright point that after was Bam Knight, or that evening, I should say, was Bam Knight, and he broke off a long touchdown run against Clemson. He had the 100-yard touchdown return for kickoff, I believe, against Miami last year. He brings you an element of big play in the running game, so you have to kind of stick to that, even if, for 10 carries, he might have 19 yards, and you're like, why are you running the football? Why are you running the football? And then comes that 50-yard run. And against Clemson, it's going to take something like that to score. So, to me, the key to this game is NC State get the big play offensively. Can they win field position with the special teams, which would require defenses getting off on third down, getting 3 and outs, and can they win the turnover battle? Not like, all right, we got an interception at our own 20-yard line to keep Clemson from scoring, but win the turnover battle, and Clemson turned it over 3 times and we didn't, and twice Clemson turned it over in their territory type of deal to set up scoring chances. Yeah, that's what it's realistically, I believe, going to take. And just to kind of go back to your point about Mississippi State on defense, I was looking it up, and they lost 31-29 at Memphis, who's undefeated. But go back and look at that game statistically. You're like, heck, did they lose that game? As they threw for 419 yards. And, as I think you can hear in the background, Memphis had about 250 offense in that game. So Mississippi State had the defense. They do have a defense. And their defense was not the reason why they lost to Memphis. You give up 250 yards of total offense, you're doing good. So that should help a little bit. They did at least face a good defense, and they haven't faced Clemson level, but they've seen good defense and maybe a little bit more prepared for it. Last thing I'll say as I want to ramble on.
Go ahead.
Dave Doran said something interesting this week in a radio show where they saw some what he called selfish play against Mississippi State that kind of opened on offense of guys who maybe weren't getting the touches they wanted, weren't getting the play calls they wanted, weren't playing as much as they wanted, and he said it was frustrating because they talked about this in preseason where, look, we got more depth than we ever have because of this COVID year on offense. Some of you guys are going to have to be patient. A lot of you guys are going to have to be patient to make it. Going to have to be a true team effort. You're going to have to give up some this year, and then maybe that was a wake-up call to some of those guys. Okay, look, we want to be stars, we want to make the plays, we want the football, but we'd rather win. And obviously
your diva wide receivers can't be diva wide receivers.
And he didn't mention names. I don't know who it was or what it was or what, but.
Whoa! I mean, look, you can use context. It's not Leary. He had plenty of opportunities. It's not the running backs. I think Bam was fine with his carries. It wasn't a problem of carries. It was a problem of production. The offensive linemen are never going to complain about the play calls. Who does that leave?
Yeah. That's a logical deduction, but I didn't, But to your point, yeah, we'll see how maybe that was a wake-up call, and you'll see them more committed playing the role that they're asked to play and playing it to 100% capacity.
Hey, I hate to tell the receivers, but you're going to have to block this weekend. You're going to have to block, and if you get a couple catches for 50 yards, that's a great game. It's not going to be an air-it-out game against Clemson. It's just not. So, do your job this week, and then you've got all the excitement in the world going on for the rest of the schedule. You can have your 100-yard receiving game against Boston College in a couple weeks or something. Or Louisiana Tech's coming up. I'm sure you could air it out against them. But not this week. You're gonna have to get the passing game going a little bit. You need an explosive play. But Matt, you brought up a really good point with the turnover margin. And we were also talking about Mississippi State's defense. You got to look back at that game and think, yes, Mississippi State's defense was good. Yes, it really held NC State's offense in check for the better part of that game. But I don't think Mississippi State's defense and NC State's lack of production on offense alone lost that Mississippi State game. Where I think really the Wolfpack lost that game was the fact that it it lost the 50-50 areas of a ball game. It didn't take advantage of the opportunities that were handed to it, especially in the first quarter. Lost the turnover margin, lost the special teams area of play. Those two elements right there, I think, were just as impactful on the result as Mississippi State's defense, because this is an NC State team that prides itself on special teams, and Dave Doran loves to bring up turnover margin. College football in general, we make it so complicated, but really the team that wins the turnover margin more times than not is going to find a way to win the game. And when you're playing a team that probably has a little bit better talent than you, you have to find a way to win the turnover margin.
Yeah, and to your point, you throw an interception in the end zone, which was a bad play call. So that kind of went hand in hand. That's not all just, but you throw an interception in the end zone, you fumbled at midfield while driving to start the second half, you give up a 100-yard kickoff with touchdown, you missed a field goal in the first quarter. Long field goal, but a field goal we've seen Chris Dunn make 9 times out of 10. I mean, right there, you're talking potentially 17-point swing and with that fumble at midfield. But what was costly about fumble at midfield is Mississippi turned it into points. Short field, went down and got a big touchdown. So
a 17-point game and a 17-point swing in a 14-point game. There you go. There's the ball game.
Yeah. So to your point, that's totally a fair viewing of how that game unfolded. So I agree, and that's going to be huge against Clemson. You cannot. Clemson's better than Mississippi State by a mile, even if Clemson is not elite level Clemson standards. I mean, right now they're last in the ACC in total yards per game, which is stunning. Again, I think there's some valid reasons if you look big picture that might help explain that. Might say that not that Dabber Swinney says, "I promise you, we don't stink." They just got caught by a really good defense, a really good day, and then got caught surprised and unprepared by an opponent on another day. That's an offense that's not going to be last in the ACC by the end of the season.
No.
So you're just hoping that they don't figure it out against you this Saturday because you have a good defense. And if they can't figure it out this Saturday, then NC State's defense is good enough to keep them down and hold them down. They might be good enough to keep it regardless. But if Clemson really can't figure it out and the confidence and execution and turning it over, there's a lot of opportunities there for NC State's defense with its caliber of talent.
Clemson's offense will have a get-right game in these next few weeks. And I have a sneaky suspicion that it could happen this Saturday. I sure hope not. I'm sure, look, the context sets it up perfectly. Will Shipley's coming in, the freshman running back at Clemson, big NC State recruit, has a lot of family in the NC State community. Shipley's going to be ready to go in Carter Finley Stadium on Saturday afternoon, and I would expect a big game from him. I would go ahead and just set that as the standard so that it should not be surprising to anyone when that man has the best game of his short career so far on Saturday. But we look at DJ Uiagalelei, and we see his lack of production this year, and he's due to get right. He's certainly due to get right. He is not playing like the quarterback that he is. He will be an NFL guy. This is a guy that was preseason second team All ACC. Maybe that was a little bit bullish because of the team name next to his name in that poll, but we also have to consider that look, this is the perfect opportunity for him to get right. But I will point out this is his first true road game of his career. I know he went up to Notre Dame and played the double overtime game against the Fighting Irish, but that was a game where only students were allowed in the stands. I think it was, very reduced capacity. Yes, it was probably among the most electric environments of college football last year, but it's still a blip on the radar compared to the full stadiums that we're seeing in 2021. Carter Finley Stadium is going to be rocking on Saturday afternoon. I would anticipate, from Matt, what you were telling me before the podcast, sounds like it's going to be perfect weather this weekend. this is the one that everybody's circled. It's going to be a full house. The fans are going to be crazy, and it's going to be a loud environment. And we'll see how this young quarterback is able to respond to that environment because, look, I know he's gone on the road before, but this is his first true road game. It's hard to think back that Georgia Tech game, that result, it sure seemed like it was in Atlanta because the stands were very quiet, and the lightning storm that hit the Clemson area in South Carolina at the end of the first half really thinned out the crowd after halftime. But yeah, that was at Clemson, so get ready. The context is there. NC State fans have heard this many times, so look, prepare for the worst, expect the worst, and be excited by the best. I'm butchering whatever that is, but hope for the best. This is a huge game, and for Dave Doran and this coaching staff and these players, I sure hope that they're able to get over the hump and finally take down Clemson, because you know what? The winner of this game is in the driver's seat for the Atlantic Division. If Clemson loses this game, NC State has no excuse but to finish the job and win the Atlantic Division.
Well, I will say they still have the tougher of the two schedules going forward. Clemson does have Pittsburgh. That'll be a challenge at Pittsburgh. We just saw Pittsburgh lose to Western Michigan, I think. NC State still has a UNC team that certainly looked good against Virginia offensively when they came up with like 9,000 yards in Virginia.
At home.
Still have Worth on the road who looked pretty good against a very bad Florida State team. And
Miami doesn't look so tough anymore.
No.
Boston College doesn't look so tough anymore.
Yeah, that one's going to be the interesting one because we got to see what they do with the new quarterback, because NC State gets Boston College right after that a few games and then to prepare. So that to me will be the one. If you could pull off at Clemson and then pull off at Boston College, at that point I would be prepared to say you might be in the driver's seat at that point. But still a long way to go, which is my last point I make before we wrap this up is I've heard a lot of people say this is a huge game. This makes the season for NC State. I might agree that big picture-wise and the ultimate dreams of ACC championship game appearances, et cetera, this might make the season for NC State. But in terms of having a very good season, not necessarily, because this is going to be a week-to-week deal in the ACC this year. And that's just the reality. I mean, like the it team one week, i.e. Pitt and Virginia, who go and beat Illinois and Pittsburgh wins at Tennessee. And then the next week, Virginia gets blown out at UNC and Pittsburgh loses to Western Michigan. Virginia Tech was the it team after it beat UNC. It just lost to West Virginia on the road, fell behind big, made a nice effort to come back, but still lost. Florida State, hey, they might be back. Found the quarterback. Gave Notre Dame a great game. Went to overtime. Yeah, look at them now. Wake Forest is kind of an it team right now, right? They played two teams that didn't play a college football game in 2020 and then played Florida State. Are they really, So we don't know a whole lot about them. For all we know, BC quarterback could be a future Heisman Trophy winner.
And Florida State had a key injury in that game. I think their starting center was out, and he's apparently the best piece on that offensive line, or something. Florida State's a dumpster fire right now.
That's kind of why it's going to be a week-to-week deal in the ACC. So don't put too much in. Yes, a lot right looking at the ultimate goal, the ultimate of the ultimate goal. You need to beat Clemson this year because it's set up better than probably any other time in Dave Doran's tenure at NC State. But in terms of a lot of the goals for a really good season, no, it's not all on the line this weekend.
I'm so glad you brought that up before we close this out, because I 1,000% agree with you. I was going to bring it up, but I'm glad you did, because I was going to forget. Yeah, I mean, if you fast forward to the end of the season, NC State goes on to lose this game, but they go 8-4 and they beat Carolina. Or they go 9-3, they beat Carolina. That's a damn good year. It's a damn good year. Yep. So,
Yep.
See the season through its entirety. Let's not jump to conclusions because we had a disappointing outcome against Mississippi State. look, it's a road game against an SEC opponent. I think we know how NC State typically handles those situations. Until they prove otherwise, we should go ahead and consider those underdog games. So let's see. You said it best. The context is set up perfectly for NC State. Let's see if they can execute. And if not, go back to the drawing board. You got a lot of football to play. But I don't know. I got a good feeling about this Saturday. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should have a bad feeling, and that would help the case a little bit. But I'm excited. We're ready to go. We're going to have plenty of coverage over at the Wolfpacker.com. If you want to see our predictions for this game, they will be out soon on the Wolfpacker.com. I've got to go write mine as soon as I'm off this podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. And please, please, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, give it a comment, but smash that subscribe button above and beyond all things that I'm asking you to do here. Plus, use that promo code PACK60 at thewolfpacker.com for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. Go hammer that promo code PACK60 at thewolfpacker.com and follow us on social media. You can follow our main account at The Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. And you can give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack, on thewolfpacker.com. So for Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.